The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry has accused KwaZulu-Natal Hawks head Lesetja Senona of lying under oath during his second day of testimony. Proceedings were marked by tense exchanges, with commissioners highlighting inconsistencies in his account. WhatsApp messages were used to show that Senona allegedly maintained a questionable relationship with alleged drug cartel figure Kat Matlala. We go live next to the Brigitte Mabandla Justice College, where that inquiry is sitting, and Ziyanda and Ngcobo standing by with former SAPS Major-General Lesetja. Ziyanda, one of the key questions that exchange and that intro bring to mind is, why has there not been a suspension letter issued for Lieutenant General Senona this morning, based on that testimony alone yesterday, which throws the Hawks into disrepute, but also questions his connections with wanted alleged criminals?
Well, I think there is an intention, Iman, to actually suspend him. If you recall what he told us on the first day of testimony, lamenting how he's been treated, the way in which his organization and his superior has dealt with him, insofar as expressing that he must write to them as the Hawks as to why he shouldn't be suspended. So those wheels are already in motion, Iman. In fact, Justice Madlanga emphasizing that he doesn't see anything particularly wrong procedurally and substantively with that move, because Senona was decrying how, well, this seems to be one-sided. He's been asked to speak on these issues of suspension before he even came to the Commission of Inquiry. But you'll recall that the terms of reference of this commission do allow for Madlanga and the Commission to refer and actually tell institutions whether or not they can or should be advised to suspend individuals. And so that's just one aspect, man. But I want to go back to the selective amnesia of Major-General Lesetja Senona. Let's bring in Jeremy Vieri to talk about this in terms of just his plausibility. It's such an issue because you have so many instances where you don't seem to get a sense that Senona was telling the truth.
Yes, I did pick up, and I'm once again saying I'm talking from experience of interrogating people. One of the things I note with, and I saw it here, is what we call selective recall in self-defense. In other words, you particularly acutely remember those things that you can respond to defend yourself against something. But the other things, that you're supposed to remember that happen immediately before that or after that, suddenly you have amnesia. So when one listens to an interrogation to people, you always pick up those cues. So that's the one important thing that I picked up from him. The second thing is recall, selective recall. If you really have a problem with your memory, then you're supposed to, and you're at our age, the further you go back in time, the less you remember and that. But if you suddenly, very recently can't remember something at all, but you very boldly represent in living color something of 10 years or 5 years ago, but it relates to the same themes that we're talking about, then it gives us cue that you are being deceptive.
And I want to pause you there for a second, Jeremy, because I want to reflect on that, because then at some stage, Lesetja Senona did remember some events. He recalled the National Project Forum that the generals from the Hawks and within the South African Police Service, they sit on that and they share information. But he says that the issue or the investigations into Kat Matlala were not discussed in that forum. Here's what he had to say.
And you now know that your own organization is investigating him?
I now know, yes.
No, you knew it on the 5th of March.
Yes.
Because it said so in this article.
This is from the news clip, but I was not privy to the content of the investigation. It is this clip, I became aware here, but it is not what you call within my own space, my own organization, yes.
I'm sorry, what do you mean it's not within your own space? When you saw this article and you see you are the provincial head of the Hawks in KZN, your friend is being investigated by the Hawks, what did you do about that?
Hence, I said I became wary, and then I started to withdraw gradually my relationship with the commissioners.
Did you make any further inquiries within the Hawks about these allegations against Mr. Matlala?
I didn't do any further inquiries with that.
Why not?
It's not a common practice. Unless you are privy to the investigation, as I indicated earlier, that when we sit in the National Project Committee forum, they discuss certain things, and this specific project was never discussed there. And then normally, even if I have certain things that I'm dealing with, that the investigation is within that province, we don't do that. We allow them to continue with the investigations.
Jeremy Very, your thoughts?
Yes. Firstly, he's only responding on the forum issue. What he's not going back to is the fact that earlier along, when he was giving testimony in chief, he was referring to a WhatsApp group amongst the Hawks heads, where they share information on successes and all of those things. So let's say even if you didn't read the newspapers and nobody said anything in the forum,
Yeah.
from my experience when heads speak at our level, that we share information on each other's successes so that it enables the other one, maybe in another province, to say, hey, wait, hang on a minute, you arrested somebody there for this issue. We have something similar here. Let's talk. So,
In particular, Gauteng and KZN would have
Gauteng and KZN,
would have to
yes,
have a
yes.
conversation on Kat
especially,
Matlala.
yeah, and especially if you have a situation where you have a task team that works in both provinces.
Yep.
Then obviously it's even more plausible that this information would have come up. But remember, we're talking about the Hawks here and their internal forum between heads on a WhatsApp. Unless, and we should really he should be asked, I think, didn't this come up on the WhatsApp?
Yeah.
You see, so that's the one thing. But so I'm not convinced by that. But look at what is being played here. If he gets asked a question about the forum, he ends a term in of a forum. Not all things get discussed with the same degree of detail, given how big the forum is. But on tighter things, like the exclusive WhatsApp group between heads, there we would deal with a lot of detail.
And Brown Mokgotsi did tell us, Jeremy, that, he was flagged in a crime intelligence meeting, Vusmuzi Kat Matlala being referred to as John Wick. But more concerning, and before I bring you back in, Jeremy, is how Matlala, or Senona rather, shared with Matlala the details of Hawks investigators, their addresses and other private details, to what end Senona became forgetful once again. Listen to this.
Would you agree if I suggest to you that it is very strange that you would have shared with Mr. Matlala a letter disbanding the PKTT if you did not know him to have any interest in the subject of the PKTT? Would you agree with me that that's very strange?
I do not agree, Commissioner, because I was not aware he's the subject of investigation by the PKTT or any other unit within the South African Police.
Exactly my point, exactly because you did not know that, so you randomly share the disbandment letter with him.
As I'm saying, is this an unfortunate that they found it in his own gadget, and when they found it from his gadget, unfortunately, when I received the documents from the Commission, I tried to recuperate, to try and get the information to see is him and who. But unfortunately, I couldn't get that. But I disagree with that. I sent it to him because there was knowledge of me knowing that he is being investigated.
So, Jeremy, you were reflecting how still, even 2 days into testimony, Senona did not even offer an apology to those colleagues for sharing their private details, and we still don't even know why that even took place, because somehow Senona is so forgetful that things that were sent to him during conversations with Matlala, he either didn't open them. 3 messages, he says, he's never opened from Vusmuzi Kat Matlala, but also this unawareness of the political killings task team and their investigations into Matlala. Strange.
Yes, it is. But let's talk about, you know, I would have expected when he's confronted with the fact that he shared information where there's Hawks officials' names, that I would see a reaction that reflects some degree of concern. That might be followed up, that must be followed up with an apology, even if this forum, he apologizes for placing his colleagues at risk in that particular way. But the other thing that worries me about this, and it must be investigated, my concern is whether the cops whose names were mentioned in those documentation were also not involved in the investigations into Kat. Because if that is so, from the Hawk side, then we need to probe it deeper, whether the purpose of the leakage has nothing to do with the person who lives in the same complex, but has to do with identifying the cops.
Yeah.
If they were the same people to that thing. So that, to me, is a concern that needs to be established quite fast. But this thing doesn't fly to me about, because, I mean, you're sitting in a meeting, somebody sends it to you while you're sitting in the meeting, you see it, you don't ask the person about that meeting, you're asked in the forum, you don't read it afterwards, and then you're in the forum, in the meeting, you ignore this entirely.
And I mean, Jeremy, so there's so much that's happening around the commission. We hear so much testimony. Iman was asking, perhaps this morning there should have been an immediate suspension of Senona. In the same way, many want a suspension or even Senzo Mkhunu to have resigned by now. We did decry that the wheels are already in motion, but perhaps something a little more urgent, as in we've heard enough.
We've now heard enough to see there was a clear dereliction on his part to assist his colleagues afterwards with it, because him as a cop, and like me, knows if he has some degree of subjective relationship with the suspect and he wants to be honest, volunteer your service. I can help you break this guy. When you arrest this guy and we're sitting, let me sit in the back, let him see. You know, one of the things we say in our game is the first precondition for betrayal is trust, and you use that to your advantage. So, I mean, he ought to have seen from a cop perspective, or intelligence or interrogator's perspective, that he's allowing himself to be used in the process ahead would help. And secondly, he could have given much more information throughout. Or thirdly, if he had volunteered his assistance and he was still in the relationship, subject to Section 252A authority of the Criminal Procedure Act, we could have run a beautiful covert operation and extract more information out of Kat Matlala through manipulating his relationship as the thing. But he doesn't think like a cop.
And is the national interest or the security of this country,
it's bigger than his friendship.
It's bigger than his friendship, but did Lesetja Senona care about that, the Major General of the Hawks? And mind you, Iman, he's going to be in day 3 of his testimony after initially saying, well, he's only available for 1. And I know this sounds like I'm a broken record, but more grilling and probably sensational testimony expected from him once we kick things off nearly 2 hours from now, just under 2 hours from now.
And we saw that interaction with the commissioners when he tried to stand back from staying longer than was absolutely necessary. As you say, day 3, beyond his own expectations. It'll certainly be something to watch. Ziyanda, thank you very much for that update.